And today it's my pleasure to share my recent research and also lessons learned about drone LiDAR on 3D marsh mapping. So to the coastal wetlands, and it has been known for this wetland loss, and it's quite significant, much higher rate than the inland wetlands. And more specifically, the wetland vegetation, the submerged habitats on the intertidal zone. It has important ecosystem services like flood control, erosion control, nutrient filtering, water quality, carbon, and also very importantly, the economy, the recreational and commercial seafood industry. For the example of South Carolina, it has more than 300,000 acres of salt marshes, almost the same size as short marsh in Georgia. And it is one of the most pristine on the US East Coast. As probably we all know, the coastal environment and coastal wetlands, they're suffer and facing great challenges on the sea level rise. And lots of research has demonstrated the marsh dieback, marsh productivity change, decrease, and migration to the landward change. And for fighting for this sea level rise and to promote a resilience action for the coastal communities, there is a need of fine-scale 3D terrain information, since the coastal wetlands, they're mostly very flat. And a quick introduction about what is a marsh. So here I found online this very beautiful picture about the coastal vegetation change along the shoreline, along the topography, and especially the low marsh in the water side and high marsh in the land side. And specifically for the example of Spartina and alterniflora, and those are some pictures showing the tall forms of Spartina and short forms. And there are also the mud flat for whatever reasons there, and the rack during either tidal inundation or during a storm. Just to remember the uniqueness here, tidal marshes, they have this regular flooding from tide. So basically twice a day, low tide, high tide inundation. And for that reason comes to this, my favorite picture about the difficulty of working in the field. So we have to catch the very short, less than 2 hour low tide window for us to get inside. And the muddy surface also makes it very difficult to walk through. And this picture, I want to honor my poor students, graduate students. They worked in a field a few years ago. When we talk about 3D terrain or bare surface or 3D vegetation, and we basically kind of start to think about LiDAR. And airborne LiDAR has been popular right now. For the example of United States, every county in the United States, we have 3-meter scale LiDAR point cloud and high resolution DEM from there. Very beautiful stories and successful applications for the inland terrestrial fields like urban, like a forest. But for the tidal wetlands, is less a fortune there. So tidal effects makes it difficult, almost not possible for airborne LiDAR to collect vegetation data, the coastal data, only in the low tide window. It's just too short. And also the marsh plants, they're not tall enough to catch the plant structure. And for this example of one USGS, a LiDAR point cloud tile over my study area, So a meter scale spacing, basically just not enough points to see the marsh vegetation. And also you may see this extremely flat topography from the profile at the bottom. So that triggers my thought, and since now drone has been used everywhere, and either we call it drone as UAS or UAV, and basically the drone technologies has been widely applied. And so my interest here is to check if the drone LiDAR could play a better role in detecting this 3D marsh structure. Field experiment last August, September, we set up this field and we launched the drone LiDAR flies and by the vendor in the North Inlet, excuse me. And at the same time, we made intensive field survey and a group of students. We went into the field and collect the ground control points for the mission. Also collect marsh height and dry biomass for the field test. Here's the North Inlet history. So our missions include 2 long strips of flights. Each flight is about 80 acres, and the flight was made about 80 meters high, so 240 feet above ground. And we're using a bundle, the Avia LiDAR and also RGB camera together. So the left subset is an example of the ortho image from the same mission. A visual comparison between the drone LiDAR point cloud and the USGS airborne LiDAR. So you can tell from the two fields, one is the high marsh with short forms of vegetation, another is low marsh inside the estuary with much taller vegetation. And the airborne LiDAR has 63 centimeter spacing, and you can tell the limited number of points over there, hardly you can tell more details of the marsh plots there. And drone LiDAR has 3 centimeter spacing, 3.6, and much more points over the same plot. So you can tell more details of individual marsh plots. Some of the plots, they're monitored by other research projects in the same area. And so everyone's talking about AI right now. So we're also trying to use deep learning and take advantage of the deep learning technologies for the point cloud classification. So we set up the training area in the Good Island. So 2/3 for the training and then split the leftover as validation set and also a standalone evaluation set. Following the ASPRS last classification rule, so we collected our training data by visual interpretation of all the points in this training area. So we visually identify each point as ground in the very low end surface, low vegetation, so the points above ground, and high vegetation. Like you can tell here, the roadside trees and also the taller marsh plants along the creek bank. The high marsh, basically, they have short plants, so they're counted as low vegetation. Training has we follow the standard procedure. I recall David mentioned right now the research is really multi-disciplinary and interdisciplinary. So deep learning models have been available in multiple places. We are using ArcGIS Pro here and take advantage. It's several models adopted there. After testing, we choose RentLandNet. We also tested the other popular one, PointCNN, but that one was kind of having this higher confusion than this local detail-based RentLandNet. So that's another story. I'm not going to mention more details here. Just for the evaluation, so it's not as beautiful as the high resolution raster data, the deep learning results there. Here, the point cloud classification overall accuracy is about 83-84%, and the ground has a general good results. Low vegetation has higher precision, and the high vegetation has higher recall rates. I'm not going to talk too much details there, but in short, 84% of overall accuracy, that makes it a valid and meaningful exercise for point cloud classification. Here are the general results. So our point cloud from the road format in the elevation scheme, so you can tell flat topography on the coast, aside from the trees along the road, and generally the estuary is basically flat there. The classification results, three classes: ground, low veg, high veg. And we set up two example profiles. Like the left one is along the road, you can tell the trees, and off the road, that's the high marsh, the shrub and the high marsh with low vegetation. The right profile is the low marsh example, so showing more of the high vegetation, especially the structures when it's growing higher along the creek. When after removing the vegetation points, so the third one here is the ground only points, and that shows the bare earth. So that is the one used to extract bare earth surface, or DTM. There's something I really want to share here. I'm not sure if you can see my pointer, but from the second map here, there's a very clear split line between the high marsh and low marsh. And on the ground points, there's also a similar split line along sea level, so 0 meter elevation and above the datum. So that is something has been struggled for optical remote sensing, since from the multispectral image, we basically cannot tell this habitat difference there. So how good is drone LiDAR for the vertical accuracy? So from the 36 ground points, and we get this tested the accuracy, root mean square error about 5 centimeter. We also made 65 samples in the muddy field of the marsh fields, and we also tested them. A little bit more deviation, standard errors, but it has short height there, since the surface is flat. So still, root mean square error is about 5 centimeter for the bare earth positioning. Marsh height is simple. It's just a subtraction between the digital surface on the top and digital terrain on the bottom of the point cloud profile. In this example strip of the marsh, I also want to visually just tell how much advantage here from the drone LiDAR. And you can see so many more points, but at the bottom here, that's the same area for the USGS airborne LiDAR. Only limited points and almost no vegetation class from this airborne LiDAR. And also you can tell the bare earth, they're kind of matching fine. So this one also confirms the validity of drone LiDAR for the vertical positioning. General results, so we get this bare earth surface, and this Marsh class is from the author image. And we also we use a UNet for the classification of these multiple classes. And I decided to skip this exercise here as well. Another output is the Marsh height. We tested two strips. One is Good Island, another is Oyster Landing. So we can tell all these spatial distributions of Marsh height. And more details in the training area of Good Island. And from these 4 details there, again, shows pretty much of the nice distribution of bare earth and also the marsh height. And the more fitting to the 3D view here, I just feel it's interesting to show it here. Apparently, terrestrial application or upland application for LiDAR is very useful. There's no problem, not a question. Like this one, the roadside trees, individual trees, and also individual shrubs, you can also extract it quite nicely. The marsh fields, again, flat topography. And recall the airborne LiDAR, there's almost no vegetation in this field, but from drone LiDAR, we identify these individual patches. Those are the long-term LTER biology project monitored plots by Dr. Jim Morris at my university. And these plots are controlled and fertilized to test the biological process there. So this height can also be identified here. The walkboard is clear, as you can see from the high marsh field, and for the low marsh close to the tidal water. So, and the vegetation again is much higher. So, and in this Good Island study area, the marsh height has 2 modes, 2 peaks here. Again, I feel that's a very good indication of the high marsh with the low plants. From the drone LiDAR is only about 20 centimeters high. And the low marsh field, the drone LiDAR height is about 1 meter. So if you have good experiences on coast, you probably know it's actually underestimating. It should be taller than this, and that's also clear showed here. And the accuracy assessment for drone LiDAR on the vegetation. So those points, as you see from the left here, those points are the field samples. So in the 2 sides, we have a total of 65 samples. At each sample is a half meter by half meter quadrant. We measure the height there, and we measure clip and dry, and measure the dry biomass at each quadrant. And so due to the physical access problem, we basically could not go further into the inland, into the interior estuary. So almost all samples are actually located in the high marsh habitat that's shorter than the interior estuary. This one, so also showing the shorter kind of underestimation of the drone LiDAR extracted marsh height in comparison with the in-field measurement is basically lower, but this very high, strongly significant linear relationship between the drone LiDAR and field measurement. And that tells, again, the feasibility and capability of adjusting the drone LiDAR collection and convert it to the real field marsh height measurement. the Pearson's R of 0.925. That is very good relationship indication. Another one is this is linking to my other study, kind of next paper we are writing. It's more about biomass quantification. Lots of studies have done in the past using multispectral cameras to extract vegetation indices like ADVI, like red edge index, or even just RGB index to estimate marsh biomass. In general, the R square is not that high. So from multiple papers, I notice a regular kind of number of R square of 0.4, 0.5 with spectral index. From the LiDAR height, we also just compare that with biomass itself also is about 0.4 to 6 adjusted R square. So this figure just shows marsh height has an indication of dry biomass, but it cannot tell it alone. So we need other parameters involved for a better biomass estimation. That's my other research that is ongoing. Take-home message here. So this project is funded by NASA EPSCoR. So within 1 year, we conducted this work and trying to learn the pros and cons, advantage and disadvantage of 3D marsh mapping from drone LiDAR. The good side, so drone LiDAR has a much finer spacing and 3.6 centimeter spacing when the it's a Matrice 200 RTK, so it's not very advanced drone, but it's decent enough. And flying at 80 meters, 3 centimeter spacing, that is fair enough to collecting more details. And the 5 centimeter vertical positioning accuracy for bare earth topography, that's also set the foundation for drone LiDAR to be applied for other studies, terrain mapping, marsh mapping, and other whatever projection mapping. So we use deep learning and it's quite powerful as already proven, and it's able to extract the 3D marsh structures, marsh vegetation, and ground points there. There's something I forgot to mention in the beginning is compared with drone camera, like the small Phantom 4 Pro, I guess that's the most popular, probably one of the most popular drones we use in this application field. Compare with that one, the drone camera and pictures and also photogrammetry based on structure from motion. Drone LiDAR, it does not require heavy overlay, and also it gets large coverage in a relatively short time. For the example of my experiment, the 80 acres, it can be collected within 30 minutes. So that makes it very good and suitable for coastal wetlands. Another some kind of lineup for the disadvantages there. The USGS airborne LiDAR has single return features in marsh fields. That means every point, every XY location, there's only one return. It surprised me that for drone LiDAR at lower flight and much denser point cloud, it still has single returns. So except the trees along the road, all the points are basically just a 1 point, single return there. Also, another big disadvantage is the truthing data. So different from the raster data, the drone points, there's no clear edges, there's no kind of shape information. So collecting the truthing data for deep learning is more based on visual interpretation. So that itself introduces uncertainties there. Um, and another piece of problem is the lack of Marsh field data in the interior history. Another one I did not get time to explain more here is the overlaid points between the two adjacent flight lines. That has to be happen. This flight, I believe we said only about 30% of overlay. But the points in between here that really cause it's okay with the Marsh height, but we notice heavy trouble on the density calculation. That's why I did not include density here yet. The scanning mode is another interesting story. So most drone LiDAR applies linear scan mode. That's the default, the quickest, the most kind of efficient way. But for the Marsh fields, it caused really, really big trouble for the lack of details there in the cross track. We tested between the linear scan and the spirograph scan, like the right one, that's the circular scan. And apparently this circular scan, although is slower and needs more kind of slower flight there, it does collect much better Marsh details, vegetation structure details there. So the last piece, probably I do not need to mention much here. Still, there's a challenge for the drone LiDAR. There's a financial challenge, operational challenge, and also time commitment. That's also something we need to consider when we look into future research projects. So that's all, and thank you. And